In the 4th chapter of the Hebrew Bible's book of Daniel, the Watchers are described as a group of divine overseers, later associated with angels.
The Watchers are essentially messengers, and so this is why many scholars understand the Watchers to be a class of angels, since angels were understood to be messengers in the Bible. They're tasked with managing the earth and watching over humans. And some of these are said to be good watchers, they do their jobs dutifully, and others are said to be bad watchers.
It is said about the Watchers that nothing happens on earth that is not ordained by their hand and executed by their agents. Who are they? What are they? Well, Daniel doesn't necessarily go into greater detail, but there were numerous other texts that teach more about that which is recorded in the biblical books. One of the most famous, of course, is the Book of Enoch.
The Book of Enoch, containing the first-hand account of the great-grandfather of Noah, was stricken from the Bible's Old Testament at the Council of Laodicea in the 4th century AD. In the 3rd book of this apocryphal text, Enoch says an angel, known as a watcher, took him aboard a fiery chariot that ascended to heaven.
Enoch is brought up into outer space, into heaven. It's fascinatingly detailed, and the reports of crystal walls with light coming out of them and crystal rooms sounds like someone with primitive language skills trying to explain going into a super high fidelity science fiction reality.
In many ways, when you read the Book of Enoch, he is an abductee by extraterrestrials. And they're taking him into a spaceship, they're showing him the earth, they're giving him special instructions.
The Book of Enoch also states that 200 watchers descended to earth to oversee humankind and aid in our advancement.
The Watchers were said to have taught mankind many different arts and sciences that had previously only been known to the angels of heaven. And these included astronomy, metrology, the use of weapons.
Enoch is talking about flesh and blood beings who came, saw potential for mankind, and imparted knowledge. Those are who the Watchers were.
Could it be that the Watchers described in the Book of Enoch are extraterrestrials that came to Earth and taught early humans in the distant past? Did they plant the seeds of knowledge that would lead us to this point in our technological evolution? Ancient astronaut theorists say yes, and suggest that evidence for this can be found in every corner of the world.
Around the world, we find stories that are strikingly similar to that of the Watchers coming to Earth and giving humanity forbidden knowledge, especially the secrets of heaven.
Inca legend states that the god Viracocha created humans and taught them astronomy, agriculture, and other advanced arts. The Maya civilization believed their supreme god Kukulkan taught humans writing, mathematics, and science. And in ancient Chinese legend, the divine ruler Huangdi introduced numerous advancements, such as the wheel, weaving, and writing.
In Egypt, you have the god Osiris revealing the wisdom to mortal kind on how they could construct civilization. And you find this again and again within the Eurasian continent, in Africa, but also obviously within West Asia. You have the stories of the Anunnaki.
The stories of the Anunnaki, or the Watchers, or the gods in the Greek pantheon, or any of the ancient gods, were based on physical visitations.
They are all the same group, the same extraterrestrial. They just have received different names among the tribes and among the continents.
London, England. 1604. To end a dispute in the Anglican Church, King James I orders the creation of a standardized English Bible. Today, more than 4 centuries after its creation, the King James Version remains the most famous Bible in history and one of the most published books of all time. Interestingly, while it contains 66 books, the Catholic Bible has 73, and the Ethiopian Orthodox version is comprised of 81. But why were so many texts, including the Book of Enoch, edited out?
There has always been accepted literature, which becomes the foundation of orthodoxy, and then there's other literature that the accepted orthodoxy rejects.
Books that don't make it into the collection of the Bible, both the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament, or the Apocrypha.
The word apocrypha means hidden things, and that's probably from the ancients hiding these texts away from the general public because they could be dangerous.
Dangerous? Is it possible that the Book of Enoch was omitted because it exposed truths about human history that were considered too risky for the public to know? Ancient astronaut theorists suggest insight can be found by examining a passage in the Old Testament.
We know from the book of Daniel in chapter 4 that there is a group of angelic entities whose job, whose role it is ordained by God to direct the affairs of humanity. These angelic forces look over our world and control the direction of civilization.
While this passage is brief, these beings serve as the primary focus of the Book of Enoch, where they are described as divine overseers known as the Watchers.
Enoch calls them in the English version guardians of the sky or watchers of the sky. In the German version, they are called angels. No, it was simply another time. Now we have a new time. Now we must translate it with new words. Change the word of angel, trash it out, and write extraterrestrial.
These angels were not spiritual beings, they were physical beings. That is something very clear about the identity of biblical angels. They're not of this world, and therefore they are not terrestrial, and therefore they are extraterrestrial.
According to the Book of Enoch, a total of 200 Watchers descended to Earth.
Enoch gives us some of the names, but we know they were ruled by Semyaza and Azazel. Azazel was later known as Lucifer.
The Watchers had a very bright appearance, and one of their names was the Shining Ones. And even Enoch, when he wrote about them, he even said he could barely look at them because they were so bright.
Qumran, the West Bank. Here, during a series of excavations beginning in 1949, archaeologists unearthed hundreds of ancient scrolls. They are believed to have been written by a Hebrew sect known as the Essenes more than 2,000 years ago. Several of the scrolls contain fragments of what has become known as the Book of Enoch, and the account of a rebellion launched by a group of angels called the Watchers.
One of the most famous parts of the Book of Enoch is the story of the Watchers. This is a story about 200 angels that were charged with watching over mankind in its early stages and basically taking care of us, looking out for us.
The Watchers are a group of angels who are dispatched to watch humans and to help humans. Now, the Watchers are very interesting because they are angels who interact with humans.
There's a brief reference to this in Genesis, but the Book of Enoch essentially expands that story and tells a more full story. This was taken out of the canon of the Bible early in the church's life, but it was in for a period of time.
Once the Watchers begin to interact with humans, They become infatuated with this new species, and they become lustful of this new species. And all of a sudden, the original idea, the original commands that they were given seem a lot less interesting to them.
They came to a point where they wanted to take wives and have children, and so they decided to rebel, create bodies, marry, and bear children.
According to the Book of Enoch, the leader of this rebellion is a watcher known as Shemyaza, or Satanael. Could this be the same character we know as Satan?
So what we're seeing in the story of Shemyaza and the Watchers is very similar to the story of Lucifer in charge of the angels. In both cases, we're confronted with a hierarchy of a species which is between us and God, the leader of which disagrees with God and basically wants to live amongst mankind.
When you look at the different versions of the Book of Enoch, the one thing that combines all of them is that they talk about the Watchers from heaven. And they are the ones who gave knowledge. And when I look at terms such as Watchers from heaven, then personally I interpret them as possible extraterrestrials.
Do the ancient accounts of Shemyaza's revolt and Lucifer's fall suggest that Satan's efforts to corrupt mankind in the Garden of Eden were actually an attempt to give man forbidden knowledge? And might these legends be based not on myth, but on actual historical events? Events involving extraterrestrial visitors? Ancient astronaut theorists say yes, and believe that close examination of the Book of Enoch may point to physical evidence of where Satan's so-called rebellion against God may have actually occurred. Mount Hermon, Lebanon. Straddling the border of Syria, this legendary mountain, as described in the Book of Enoch, is the peak where Shemyaza and the Watchers descended to earth.
In the Book of Enoch, there's a reference to Mount Hermon. We see the angels basically descending to Mount Hermon. So Mount Hermon was both a place of connection with heaven and kind of a sally port between earth and heaven. The Watchers, being angels from heaven, knew the sciences of heaven. Shemyaza was basically an expert in enchantment and root cutting. You could think of it as basically witchcraft, the casting of spells, creating magic, and using roots to create potions.
The Book of Enoch lists very specifically the subjects that are taught to humans by the Watchers, by these angels who begin to share their wisdom with them.
The Book of Enoch describes Mount Hermon as the place where Shemyaza taught humans about magic and medicine. Other powerful angels passed on knowledge of metallurgy, weapons, astrology, science, and even warfare.
The Watchers delivered to humanity the forbidden knowledge of God. All the stories in ancient cultures, cross-cultural, had these tales of beings that would deliver the forbidden knowledge of the gods to humans, and they were all condemned for it.
The Watchers, through Shemyaza, give us extraordinary tools which make our lives much, much better on Earth. So is Shemyaza really a bad guy, or did he in fact liberate humans from ignorance? And if Shemyaza actually is the forerunner of Satan, has Satan actually been misrepresented all of these years?
Is it possible that Shemyaza and the other Watchers were extraterrestrial beings that gave humanity the foundations for civilization? Then if so, how did Satan come to be so misunderstood and misinterpreted by history?
If we equal Shemyaza and Satan, What we're confronted with here is a larger framework which basically tells us that Shemyaza, Satan, were here to civilize us. The Watchers were civilizing deities. They basically helped us to develop our skills of civilization. And so what we're confronted with here is basically the conclusion that civilization, the way we know it, is not something divine, but is literally satanic. It was Satan who gave us the tools of civilization.
Was Satan really a civilizing force for early humans, as some ancient astronaut theorists believe? And if so, might further evidence be found by examining other ancient myths and legends?
In ancient Sumeria, you have these very curious stories of the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki were half god, half man, who came down from the stars. They were instructing the Sumerians in various arts of civilization. They were very strange looking. They had elongated heads. They looked almost like insect-type people, or what they call reptilian features, in a sense, or a viper visage, as the Watchers were called in the Bible.
The Bible's book of Genesis. In chapter 6, verse 9, begins the story of Noah and the flood, in which God sends a great deluge to cleanse the earth, which has become overrun by sin. It is one of the most well-known tales from the Bible, but curiously, nearly identical stories exist in dozens of other ancient traditions.
We've heard about the flood of Noah, which wiped out that whole generation and brought about a new generation of descendants of Noah. The fact is, there's all these stories of the Great Flood in all countries across the world. Plato talked about Atlantis. He talked about a whole civilization destroyed by floods. In the Bible, Turkey, in Egypt, among the Native Americans, there's a story that the Great Flood wrapped around the entire planet. All life was destroyed. The connection between the biblical story of the Great Flood and the destruction of other societies around the world through floods tell us one thing: there actually was a Great Flood. And that at one point in the history of this planet, all life was wiped out as the earth was covered in water.
In all mythologies, including the Bible, some gods are coming down and teach the human a great flood will come and destroy you. And this God knew it long before. And they knew it because they themselves made the great flood. The great flood was created by extraterrestrials on purpose.
Could the story of the Great Flood be an historical record of a real event that was brought on by extraterrestrials? But if the ancient astronaut theory is correct, and aliens genetically engineered humankind, why would they then destroy their greatest creation?
We have the records as described in the Book of Enoch and other literature that the Watchers led to the moral corruption of all humanity, which led to the destruction of the face of the earth. They were introducing hidden technologies centuries before they were meant to be introduced. They corrupted the human gene pool.
In Genesis 6, we hear about the sons of God. They see the daughters of men, and they lust after them, and they come down, and they take them as wives. And then they create a hybrid race called the Nephilim. You weren't supposed to fraternize with the natives, but this is what we are told in the Bible. Now, what are we to make of these texts? Are we to say, well, maybe these angels, these sons of God, did they have sex the old-fashioned way? We don't know, but we need to start looking at these stories from a 21st century perspective. With the technology that we have with genetic engineering and splicing genes and what have you, maybe we can revisit this story and look at it from maybe an extraterrestrial hypothesis or point of view. They're creating a hybrid race. The DNA of the off-world intelligence and the human DNA creates this hybrid race. And most of these beings, for better or for worse, had what we could call superhuman powers.